I really had a hard time when that job ended. You wake up one day and it's gone, and you want to go through those stages of grief, but then now you're looking for a job. Even though I didn't necessarily want to stay, they spent a lot of days doing nothing, sitting thinking, who am I? Who am I if I'm not who I was? Who am I?
Hey there, and welcome to Work is Third, the podcast that is all about indulging in rest, setting boundaries, finding joy, and putting yourself first. I'm Dawn Hunter, your host, and I'm so excited you're here. Today, I'm joined by someone very special to me, my former boss, mentor, and friend, Lynn Gallagher. Lynn and I work together in New Mexico's Department of Health, and this episode is part reunion, part reflection. We talk about what it means to lead with kindness, navigate grief, and rediscover who you are outside of your job title. It's heartfelt, funny, and a reminder that the best leaders are those who lead with heart. If you want to skip around, there are section and chapter markers, but you're going to want to stick around for the whole thing. Let's dive in. Hello, Lynn, and welcome to Work is Third.
Hey, Dawn, nice to see you.
It is really nice to see you.
I know, it's been a long minute. It's been a couple of minutes, considering that we used to get together at least monthly.
Yeah, and that fell off. We could talk about that.
Yeah.
So for listeners today, this will be a little bit of a catch up because Lynn and I go way back and have lots of great conversations related to how we take care of ourselves and our dream for the future and all those good things. But before we get into any of that, Lynn, I would like to ask you to share a word to describe how you're doing today.
Yeah, so I knew this was coming, and I'm a listener of your podcast, so it's funny. I was thinking a couple of days ago about what would be my word of that day. I don't know what my word for today was going to be, but today it's scattered, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm getting ready to go on vacation in a couple of days, just for a small, quick Oktoberfest vacation with my husband and some friends, and I've got a lot of tasks. Work tasks. So this is a great time to have this work is third conversation, but I'm scattered to the point where I woke up this morning and I put on 2 different socks and I put on 2 different earrings. And I kind of have been, where am I going today? So I'm going to say my word is scattered. And I hope that makes the podcast go, in crazy, wonderful, great directions.
I also hope for that. I actually don't know if there's a time recently that I have put on 2 different socks and 2 different earrings. No, I have put on different earrings before. I have done that one.
Well, I grew up in the 80s and wearing 2 different earrings was always sort of like the thing. So I almost came on the podcast saying, I'm going to channel my inner 80s. I opted to go back and find a matching pair.
Okay. But if we do this again, definitely let's plan on wearing mismatched earrings.
Let's do it. I'm all for it. Maybe one of those feather earrings that I probably have somewhere in my closet somewhere.
Oh yes, I have one of those somewhere too.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so let's start how we know each other. So we first met working in New Mexico.
We did, yeah. So great, prophetic moment meeting you, both of us working in health. Loved that we both had sort of a Florida experience, common experience, Stetson law sort of experience there. And then that passion for really improving health outcomes for people in New Mexico. So loved meeting you.
I always thought it was really fascinating because you're from TRC, right?
I was born and raised in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, to be clear. And moved away when I was moved away for college, got my undergrad at Stony Brook in Long Island, and then ended up going to law school in Florida and made quite a nice life there in Florida. St. Petersburg, worked in St. Petersburg, lived in Fort Lauderdale. So all over in that area, but love St. Petersburg.
Yeah. So we did not know each other before meeting in New Mexico. But I also grew up in Alamogordo. Look, I'm wearing my Alamogordo Tiger shirt today.
Nice.
And then moved to Florida, went to law school in Florida like you. And then we both met randomly working at the health department. But it was meant to be, I think.
It was. And, I just remember at times we went through a lot of emotional roller coasters working in health, working in New Mexico, went through the death of our leader. And then, me stepping into that role and sort of feeling overwhelmed and what do you do? But I'm going to tell you, Dawn, honestly, knowing that you were there, knowing that you were able to step in and work as a leadership team with me, being that strong female voice in New Mexico was probably among the highlights of that job. Knowing that I had that backbone, someone there that we could vent with, someone there we could talk to, strategize with, that really got me through that very stressful job. So good job.
Yeah, well, thank you. But thanks for being a great leader, because I still think back, like, I loved that time period so much in my life. I feel like I was so connected. I felt a deep sense of purpose in my work. And I also felt like we were all aligned. Like, we just had a really amazing, badass female leadership team,
We did.
led by you, right?
Yeah,
And
we did.
And I think we were all really committed. And I think, that is part of what makes work, I don't know, I don't want to say bearable or tolerable, but certainly it makes work less all consuming when it's
Yeah.
aligned with what you want to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like when you have synergy, I call, when you have this synergistic effect where like minds collide, and it wasn't just our leadership team. We had the people that we worked with in the Department of Health in New Mexico at that time are still very, very close to my heart. It's one of the hardest job I've ever had in my life. And I've had some pretty hard jobs, but the meaning and the outputs and the outcomes that we were striving for. And I think that the milestones that we made would not have been possible if it hadn't have been for those people, you coming back to New Mexico, the people that we had working with us as our group. We really did. It was revolutionary, I think, and it was wonderful. And I miss it. I miss the strides we made. Yeah, it was great. And now changed for us, for both of us. And I'm thoroughly proud to see how you have just this trajectory for this passion that you've had for so long is turned into this reality that I get to see unfold, and I love it.
Well, I love it too. And, part of it is really, honestly, your support, not just like when we were in New Mexico, but we had a power squad also. We still have a power squad. We just are on hiatus.
Yeah, the power squad is on hiatus. I do love that. I love that. Just for people listening, I really think that having a power squad, I know that some of your other guests on the podcast have talked about having a group of women, a group of people that meet, that get together. You have your nerd night. You have the group of women that you have that are really strong influences in your life. So when we created that power squad right around COVID, and it was a virtual connection among people, some women that we work with, that was a saving grace for me. That was really, I had lost a job at that time. I was feeling deflated. I think, Dawn, you had stepped into a new role that had its challenges. Our other friend who was in the group was having her challenges, moved across to a new state, was setting up a whole new life. And every time I would see that power squad meeting coming up on that day, it gave me the wind beneath my wings. It gave me this ability to say, okay, I can get through today because my girls are going to be there.
I feel the same way. And I was talking recently with someone about grief. And as you know, probably grief has come up quite a bit on this podcast.
It has, yeah.
But for all of us, as we left the health department and we left those roles that we had, and I think we're very connected to and attached to, we had to process that in some ways. And I think having each other helped us to process not just going on to these new jobs that had their own challenges, but also leaving this space that we had been in together and recognizing like just that loss you feel when you create amazing things and then things shift and you have to let it go.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I really had a hard time when that job ended. To the point that I was in this high role for the state, and then you wake up one day and it's gone, and you want to go through those stages of grief, but then now you're looking for a job. And in reality, other people who were there stayed in their jobs. You want to be in their corner, and you want to be happy for people who were able to have that resiliency and to stay. Even though I didn't necessarily want to stay then, I was really devastated, and I really felt like my arm had been amputated, or I felt like I had experienced our friend Retta's death all over again. I really felt like I had experienced that death all over again. And Yeah, another health secretary, I'm actually trying to find the name of the book, but another health secretary at the time sent me a copy of a book and I read it, and it was really earth-shattering to me because it was about how to go through grief when you're in a job. And
Oh, yeah.
probably can't find it while we're on the podcast, but I can certainly send it and you can share it at another time in the list. But I needed to hear it because I spent a lot of days doing nothing, sitting thinking, who am I? Who am I if I'm not who I was? Who am I? So
Yeah. So I want to come back in a moment to Retta, but I want to share, I don't know if we talked about this a whole lot. I'm sure I mentioned it, but we all had to resign our roles when the
yeah.
administration changed. And I was really actively trying to stay on in the health department in my role as the policy director that I had been before, or some other role that was related to what I had been doing. And I just had 2 weeks where I had nothing. Like, I don't, the governor's going through her transition, trying to make all these hires, etc. But I remember I was at the gym, and one of my friends who still works at the health department, she called and she's like, "There's some guy setting up in your office. Does this mean you're not coming back?" And I was on the treadmill and I just like burst into tears. It
Yeah.
was just so heavy because I wanted so much to remain a part of it and to keep
Yeah.
doing this amazing work. And when she said that, it was just something shattered inside of me.
Yeah, I mean, that was a reality for a lot of us. And I think it's a sad thing. I will talk a little bit about that, my philosophy on that. I think in government, we certainly understand political whims. We certainly understand that things ebb and flow with political whims. But things like health should take a deeper dive into the expertise that you've amassed in a department or in an agency. And your experience and your expertise in health working on a national level for state accreditation, and then just waking up one moment and saying, oh, you no longer have value because you were hired by A, B, or C, is really damning to a community, especially a community of rural people. It certainly happens. We see it happening in New York. We see it happening in Washington. We see it happening in larger cities. I don't know. I feel ya. I cried many a days. I cried not on the treadmill, but I certainly sat and cried many a days.
So I've thought about this a lot, is that especially in the current moment, it's super relevant, and it's not specific to any administration. This happens all the time across political parties. People come in and they want their own people there. And this is just
Of
how
course.
politics works here. But the consequence is that you are removing stability, knowledge, compassion, from the equation. And so you end up with a workforce that has to go through unnecessary transitions as well. So it's hard enough to change, I think, to have a new governor, especially if the party changes or something like that, to have a whole new agenda set for you. And then also have to navigate many members of your leadership team being gone, or having to navigate a change in your office structure, or a decrease in budget, or sometimes an increase in budget. And then you don't have the infrastructure to deal with that. And yeah, I think there needs to be more stability with transitions. And I think we see this now with like the CDC and HHS, right? It's just, and all the federal agencies, let's be honest, how disruptive it is to the health of everyone in this country for these changes to be occurring the way that they're occurring.
It is. And how hard is it when, grants get canceled and there's really not that because statement? Simon Sinek is one of my favorite leaders, the why factor, like, some of that stuff is gone when you work in politics. I've told this many times when I talk about health. I'm a lawyer first. I'm a lawyer by education. I'm an attorney by education. But health is something that's primal inside of me. And I want people to live a healthier, brighter. I want people to do what you do, Dawn. I want people to enjoy their life and to have that work is third mentality, but to do it in a healthy way. And when you have these disruptive moments, the vibrations of that are longer played than I think we'll ever understand. I think it's a longer trajectory. I'll use a quick example because I know that we don't have unlimited time, but quick example is during that administration when and I support solid transitions. I support our republic form of government. I support term limits. I support all of those functions, turns happening. However, when people were coming into the health department for the newly elected governor coming in, when her team was coming in, asking questions, doing things, we were right in the middle of the opioid crisis, and monies had been allocated and disbursements were being made and people's lives were being changed. And January 20th, whatever date that was, whatever the date was, all of that work we did from 2016 to 2018 stopped. And I had people calling me crying, on their treadmills crying, saying, what are we going to do? We have all this work. And I said, I can't help you anymore. And that's the hardest statement I've ever had to say to someone is, I can't help you anymore. I can't help you that way anymore, which is kind of why I'm a legal consultant now. I like working with governments. I like being a legal consultant. I like helping people fit in those boundaries and fix some of those longstanding problems. But it's sad.
So on a more personal level, how did you navigate the grief? So you said you spent a lot of time crying. Did you just allow yourself to be sad, or like what else were you doing during that time?
We got a dog. We got a dog, and I started walking the dog, spending time in nature. I really think spending time in nature is important. I have a very strong faith foundation, and I think my church and my belief in God has, at that time, I needed to focus on that, and I needed to kind of strengthen some of my grounding exercises. How do I ground myself in nature? This is the reality. Stop looking back. I try not to look back. I try to look forward. I've always been that way. Even as a leader, people come and say, this happened, that happened. Okay, well, what are we going to do? The answer shouldn't be what happened. It should be, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to move forward? So I feel like I did a lot of cooking. I love to cook. And I started reading a lot more books. Like I said, I read that book, and I wish I could think of the name of it. I think you and I, the Power Squad was meeting, and we had a lot of great recommendations. I read How to Be a Million. What is it? How to Be a Millionaire.
We should all be millionaires.
We should all be millionaires, and Designing Your Life, the wonderful Designing Your Life.
Love that one.
Yeah. I know. And I took time to really pay attention to it. And then I read a book called Attention Span by Gloria Marx. And that really kind of focused me and said, hey, wait a minute. Our society is moving really fast, and our attention spans are changing. And if I can sit here and I can feel stuck, I can walk the dog, I can do all these things, I can feel stuck, or I can figure out what's next for me. And that was really a turning point for me.
I think I navigated that time. Well, after I finished crying on the treadmill, I was still very sad. I had a long period of being sad. And then I did hear that I was able to go, I was hired back to work under the administration, but then in some ways it lost some of its luster for me. And so I didn't enjoy the job in the same way that I had before. And I started to think about, is this really what I still should be doing? Was I trying to hold on to something that was natural at that point to let it go? I mean, in some ways, I still believe that, no, I wish we could have stayed and continued to do the work because we were really, I think, on a good roll. But also, like, sometimes things end, and sometimes that's against your wishes or your choices. But how do you navigate when those things end? And I think I too started to think about, okay, well, now that I'm in this position, what's next?
Yeah. When do you feel was that moment when you said, okay, now I got it, I'm good, for you?
I think it was toward the end of that first legislative session under the new administration. I had always loved running the legislative analysis. That was always just like one of the most fun parts of the job. But I think at the end of it, I just felt like it was no longer aligned with my view on how we can use the law to improve people's lives. And I think like state legislative bodies, they have their share of bills that are completely useless and sometimes harmful, but they have really good ones too. And I just felt like on the balance, I no longer felt like I knew what my purpose was in that whole scheme. So I just was like, maybe this isn't where I should be anymore.
Yeah. That sort of happened to me when I got asked to be a speaker at one of the health councils, a national health council meeting. I got asked to be a speaker. And when I was speaking, there were a couple of the folks there were from New Mexico and from some of the health councils in New Mexico. And so this may sound egotistical, but it was literally during COVID, and it was a virtual meeting. I was I was speaking and I introduced myself as the former Secretary of Health from, 2016 to 2018. And nobody knew that I had been the health secretary. It was sort of cathartic for me because I thought, gosh, that really isn't who I am. Like, it's not who I am. It's what I did. It's not who I am, but it's what I did. And I thought that was helpful.
So you remind me, I'm into retreats, and
I know, I love that.
Yeah. And so I was at this like retreat planning workshop, and I was we're meeting new people, and so there was a woman who was like, well, tell me about you. And I started to be like, oh, I'm a public health lawyer. I do this, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, but like, who are you?
Yeah.
And I remember that I remember this conversation so distinctly, because it was then that there was clarity around this idea of lead with who you are, not what you do.
Yep. Love it.
Yeah. And for a long time, I think even after the health department, after the next job, after that, I was still what I do.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to be the person that is like who I am. And what I do is just one of the sprinkles on the cake.
Yeah, it is. And I do, like I said, I do legal consulting. And when I have to speak in public, I normally tell people, I'm Lynn Gallagher. I'm a grandmother. I'm someone who's an avid reader. I'm a lifelong learner. Oh, and by the way, I have a little bit of knowledge and I used to do this. And I think feeling that way is important because, when you talk about work is third, when you talk about this philosophy around who you are and what you do, we are attorneys, we are what we do, but we're so much more than that. And it really took that moment in time and that administration and being let go and let down, and then realizing that a doctor telling me I have really high cortisol, that fight or flight, I had really high cortisol, to say, gosh, I need to focus on something else besides being an attorney, being focused, being driven, being this. So
yeah, high cortisol level is so bad for you in the long run.
It's so bad for you. It is so bad for you. It's funny because I always find myself very measured. I think I'm a very measured person. I don't over stress. I don't feel like I have a high stress. Things don't trigger me. I don't respond to things, I think, sometimes the way I think other people do. But when the doctor said he said, well, something inside you is telling you that you do. And I said, okay, I guess.
Your body's telling you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a hard thing to do, to go from working at the speed of light and having 9 programs, 54 public health offices, a very large budget, everything happening in your periphery, to only being you and your household and yourself in the periphery. Looking in that mirror is a hard mirror.
Yeah, it is. When you get rid of all the distractions and all the things.
Yeah.
And are just with yourself.
Yeah.
Can you be with yourself?
Going back to the power squad that we created, that really helped me. But, you having those conversations and being able to be vulnerable, we had this whole process. What are your 3 wishes? What are the 3 things you're thankful for? What are you aspiring for and to? And then also being able to say, I'm kind of disappointed that this didn't happen.
Those conversations were so helpful because one of the things that we did is I asked y'all for feedback. Like, what words would you use to describe me? What do you think are my strengths?
Yeah.
Right. Those to me that was one of the most helpful conversations or series of conversations that we had. And we did that for each other.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful because then you can think about, okay, how do other people perceive me? And am I seeing that in myself? And then if I am that person, how do I build on that?
And how do I believe what you see in me? If you see something in me and I don't see it or believe it, how do I overcome that and believe it and see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You also shared some great tools. You created that test that we took, which was great. It's, really insightful as to kind of who we are and how we think. I love that.
I love creating these like little assessments or tools or worksheets for people. It is so fun to me. So I want to go back to Retta Ward, who is our Secretary of Health and who, as you noted, passed away while we were in our positions unexpectedly. She was on my mind this week, actually, because we read in my book club, Jacinda Ardern's new memoir, A Different Kind of Power.
A Different Kind of Power. Yeah. Great book. Yeah.
Yeah, and loved it. But one of the things she talks about is kindness and leading with kindness, which of course was Retta. I mean, that was
Yeah.
her philosophy. And as you noted, that was also a really challenging moment to navigate because the unexpected loss of our leader and having to pivot. And for you, having a leadership team that supported you transitioning in this really traumatic, event. And then for all of us as individual human beings, right, experiencing this loss in different ways and then managing teams of people who were experiencing it in their own ways. That
Very.
was a really significant time. I don't know if you wanted to add more to that, but I was thinking about her specifically the kindness piece and just that enduring legacy that I think you also tried to continue.
Yeah, Retta really became, I think, a part of our institutional makeup. She was, and still is, it's hard for me to always talk about her. She was a very good friend of mine, and we spent thousands of hours together. Funny, incredibly brilliant, and had a passion for public health. She really was the absolute perfect public health leader of her time. I think that's true to say. But you make the best point is that I doubt that in my lifetime I've met anyone who is just as kind as she is. She led with integrity and kindness, and there was never a person that she met that she didn't remember your name, remember where you worked, remembered something personal about you. And it was more than a skill that she developed. It was just in her makeup. I recently was called by someone who no longer works at the health department, but works somewhere else and was looking for a reference for someone else. The first thing he said to me is, I need you to know that Retta Ward changed my life. And I said, she changed a lot of people's lives. He said, I met her one day. I was confused walking in the building, and she stopped and she said, hi, what's your name? And just kindly guided me to where I needed to be. And it wasn't until 3 days later that I realized that she was the cabinet secretary. And he said, I felt so bad that when I saw her again, I apologized. And she said, never apologize to me for anything. We are here in this together, and we're here to get through it together. And that kind of is who she is and who she was. So to lose her the way we did so suddenly, and then have to, our communications officer Kenny, I remember the day when they called and confirmed that she had passed away. I had to call him, and it was the hardest call I had to make, because I had to say to him, Kenny, we have something we have to do, and it's really hard, and we have to put everything else aside for right now. We can talk about what I'm going to tell you personally later, but right now I need a press release. I need facts. I need this. I need that. And I said, and our leader has died. And I said, I need this. I need this in 10 minutes. And all he said was, got it, boss. And he went and he gave this wonderful document. He gave this thing. I had to go meet with other people. And I just remember thinking, when am I going to mourn my friend? When am I going to mourn my friend? But you do, you do. And luckily she's still around. Her spirit, her energy. I hope that the people she touched in public health that are still there still look to her and take that passion that she had and that kindness, because she really is, she really did embody kindness.
She did. Yeah. First of all, I use her as an example all the time when I think of like great leaders, right? And
Yeah.
and I wrote recently about trauma-informed workplaces in my Better Boundaries brief. And I think, one of the things that was good in that time period was that we had like EAP, we had employee support, we had counselors available like on site who came on site, if I remember correctly.
They did. Yeah.
Yeah, to support employees, and people were able to leave if they needed to leave. And I think that's important, right? Recognizing that especially when it happens in a collective way, that we create these spaces for people to deal with their emotions and not continue to place the burden of work on them.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, but we had a meditation room in the Reynolds building. I don't know if you remember that.
That was on the first floor, right?
It was on the first floor. We created a space where you could go, and it was, everybody contributed to the vibe of the room. We got a couch and put it in there. There was I think there was even like a futon or some sort of a puffy chair. You could listen to music in there. There was a radio or I'm dating myself. You could sit in there in the quiet. It was a breastfeeding room. I remember one of the gentlemen who had a service dog would go in there and hang out with his service dog just for a minute, because he could take the dog off leash in there, and it was sort of a safe space where he could kind of decompress and and come out and feel a little more energized. I loved that room. It's a great, simple thing to do. It's a low hanging fruit. It's a simple thing to do for your employees.
I remember that being a lactation room, and now that you're saying there was all this other good stuff in there, I'm like, oh, I'm a little sad that I didn't go meditate or hang out in there.
I can tell you, I went in there a couple of times, and mostly it was a frustration room for me. It was where I go to,
I'm in a co-working space now, and we have a nap/meditation room on one of our floors in the co-working space. And I have not used it yet, but also that makes me think, like, why are we so cultured not to use, or to think like, oh, I don't have time to do that, or I can't do that, or I don't want people to see me going in here and
yeah.
resting.
Yeah, I think that there's something to be said about, and I do believe this was addressed in one of your other podcasts, sort of about that nap culture, that siesta. I'm a firm believer that you really need that recharge time, even if it's 15 minutes of just rest. I know there's an old story of miners who used to take these breaks in their sitting or in their vehicles, and they'd put a rock in their hand. I don't know if you've ever heard this story,
Mm.
but coal miners and miners who would work 24-hour shifts, 34-hour shifts, and could only take small breaks would take a break and put a rock in their hand, and they would sit and they would put their head down on something and hold the rock in their hand. And when their whole body relaxed and the rock dropped, it would wake them up. And they had apparently the equivalent of a pretty good sleep, and they were able to continue in their work. So it just kind of proves that our bodies really need regeneration, and working schedules, because of digital age. One of the things that I wanted to kind of mention is that we are tied to these phones, and you yourself were a champion of saying, I'm not responding when I'm not responding, and I'm unavailable when I'm unavailable. And that takes a lot of guts and a lot of grit. I know a lot of people who work. I used to work on Wall Street in New York City, the financial sector, and you always had to have your phone available and ready at any given moment. And how much free time it is that equating to, and then how much of the cortisol levels, right? How much of that is contributing to our rising stress when you hear that ding of your phone and you think, oh, I should answer it. Oh, I
Yep.
should see what that email is. But when you turn it off and you put it away and you put it in a drawer and you say, I'm not going to look at it today, it's freeing. It's great. I love that feeling.
I love that too. And you're right. I mean, I've long been a champion of having boundaries around work hours and time and accessibility, like how accessible I am.
Yeah.
I have an uncle who has worked high up in Verizon, and he would, he said something one time, which was, just because we have these doesn't mean we have to be accessible all the time. And I always try to remember that. And
Yeah.
I worked in Child Protective Services, and I had a phone for that job, and it was on all the time. And we had to rotate being on call. So sometimes you were working the weekend and you would get calls, 2, 3 in the morning or whatever. And that in that role, it was necessary. But I remember the sense of just relief and peace I felt when I left that job and didn't have to be on call anymore, or didn't even have to have that phone and be ready to respond to something.
Yeah. Yeah. The most free I felt is giving away that extra phone. Like I have one phone now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
liberating. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So one of the stories I always tell about Retta is how it's very similar to what you were saying with the person who is lost, is that she walks the building every day, and you walked with her.
Yeah.
But she would walk and she would say hi to everyone, and she knew personal facts about people. And to me, when I think of the idea of this podcast, work is third, part of making work third is that you recognize that we show up as human beings first, no matter what space we're in. And she did such a good job of that. And like, just knew, if somebody was trying to quit smoking, or someone had just recently celebrated a birthday, like she knew these things because she cared about people, and she made the time to connect with them.
She did. Even with her busy schedule, she did. I used to tell her all the time when we'd walk and she would see someone, Roger, hi, how's the baby? And know the baby's name. She knew intimate details about people when they would tell her that. And I would always say, one of my shortcomings, one of my weaknesses is that I am, as I said, my one word, I get distracted. And when I get distracted in my head, I tend to listen, but I don't tend to hear. And she made a point of saying, you should always hear what other people are saying because it's more important than you think. And she had that really great ability to know everyone and to want to know everyone and to, you know, I will admit to you, since COVID, there's a small part of me that is socially isolated, and I kind of feel less comfortable in big places. Not because I'm unhealthy, not because of anything other than we spent so many years off. But I remember I charged forward with her because we would walk into a room and she would walk right up to the first person. Hi, I'm Retta. What's your name? And I try to emulate that because it really was a force to be reckoned with.
I was just in a workshop in New York, and there were, I don't know, there may be 150, 200 people there, and it was loud and boisterous and joyful, but I found myself wanting to take breaks and like get out of the space. And then I was like, have I become an introvert? Like, what is happening?
Someone recently coined a phrase that I really liked. Some people are extroverted introverts, and I think I'm becoming that, but
yeah, same.
Yeah.
I describe it as like, I recover best away from people. And that's how you know you're a little bit introverted.
I definitely gather my strength when I'm alone. I definitely know that when I have moments where I can be by myself and sort of sort things out on my own, I tend to feel better.
So let's talk more about, because we've talked about work, but we're putting work third, and we're putting work on the back burner in this conversation.
Yeah, work is third. Yeah.
Work is third. What are you doing to fill up yourself these days? Because we haven't talked in a while. Like, what's going on? What good books are you reading? Like, what's going on in your life?
I know. Gosh, lots of stuff. I am working. I do my consulting work, which is good, but I made a conscious decision last year, and thanks to the Power Squad, because I think I initially brought this to that forum. I decided I don't want to work a 40-hour work week anymore. Because even for me, a 40-hour work week is a 60-hour work week. So I have identified that I can do a lot in 30 hours. So really my work days are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I have Friday and until Monday to live my best life. Reading a lot of books, reading a weird series of books about a dystopian reality called The Passage. It starts with The Passage, and then it's a virus. Of course, it's a virus because public health, right? It's got to be a virus.
Public health. Yeah.
Yeah. So this virus is weaponized, and they inject it into these 12, and then these 12 sort of become, I'll say, vampires of some sort. And then now it's 100 years in the future, and society is trying to figure out what to do and how to coexist with these viral mutant beings. And there's a savior who's a little 12-year-old girl. And anyway, it's interesting. It's just an intense read for me because I'm used to reading more books like fixed mindset versus growth mindset. I mean, I'm used to reading that. So this is a real stretch for me. And then my niece recommended a couple of books. She's an avid reader. She's in her early 40s and has a couple of book clubs. So I globbed onto hers, but hers are a little more touchy-feely. One of them is It Starts With Us, which I didn't watch the movie, and I'm reading that one, and then she says I have to read the next one. So I tend to listen to audiobooks. I read a book, and then by my chair in the living room, I have a classic book. So I'm also trying to finish reading again Of Mice and Men.
Such a good one.
Yeah, just because I think it's good to stay rooted in the classics.
I agree. I'm trying to think. I just reread, what did I read? Oh, I think I reread recently Slaughterhouse-Five.
Yeah, that's a good book. I love that book.
Yeah, I love that book. Yeah. And it's not a long read, right? So it's an easy one to get through. And last year I read The Plague. That's an oldie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But it was fun to read. I mean, it's such a good storytelling.
It is, yeah. That's what I like. I really like when the story takes me places that I wouldn't normally go in my brain. So I love that. And then for us, fall is really where I come alive. I love the weather. We're in New Mexico in the fall, and it couldn't be more glorious. So for anyone wanting to travel to New Mexico, fall is the best time to come. A lot of activities. My community where we live, the street where we live, is home to the largest Halloween decorating street. So it's a competition, and my planning is already underway. We have big animatronics, and my whole family gets together, a very large family, and we all donate inflatables and decorations and food. And so Halloween is going to be really big. And I know that you go to Halloween Horror Nights, is getting ready to ramp up.
Love Halloween Horror Nights. Love Halloween in general. Love everything about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I woke up this morning, so this is going to date this podcast, but I woke up, I was like, it's October 1st. I can put my ghosts on the front porch.
That's right. There you go. Yep. I cheated a little. I put a couple of things out yesterday just because if you drive down our neighborhood, most of the houses already at least have their pumpkins, their jack-o'-lanterns out and have something floating in the trees. So it's making my dog on the walk. She doesn't quite know when she sees a giant werewolf or a skeleton or a floaty ghost. Now she's getting, I think, inoculated to it.
Yeah, my dog Griff is the same. Like he will see some of these moving things in people's yards and go toward them tentatively and then jump back a little bit and then go close again. And it's so cute. Maybe it's terrifying for him. I'm not sure. But I'm like, oh,
well, they've got it. I really do believe that dogs have a sense of learning. I think that they can understand that it's not real and it's not going to be hurtful, but I love this neighborhood, and I love that aspect that it is when the whole street activates on Halloween night. It really is like a movie set. If you ever were to come and visit, the kids are walking around, and we give out. I buy over 500 of the glow stick bracelets and stuff, and everyone gets a glow stick bracelet, and you just see the whole street, kids walking up and down. They bus kids to our community, even from El Paso. They bus kids into this whole little neighborhood that we live in because it's so fun. Yeah.
I'm reminded because I'm looking at the time. I'm going to grab something off my wall because I wanted to show this to you.
Okay.
One of the things that I always really loved working for you as a leader is that you always try to find these fun ways for us to connect, right? So it was like we had very intense jobs, but you were always like, we're people and we got to be around each other. Let's enjoy it. And so like one year we did a Christmas sweater cookie decorating contest.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was so fun. And we set all of the cookies out. And then as people came into our office from throughout the building, they could decide, they could vote on which one they liked the best.
I loved that. That was so great.
That was great. And then one year you were like, we're going to do a painting and like bagels and painting breakfast. And you let me pick out the picture that we were going to paint.
Yeah.
And it was this turtle. But there are people who are not seeing this. You have the turtle too. This was one of the funnest things. This still is on my wall. Yeah.
Yeah, mine too. Mine stays right here by my desk.
Yeah.
And you know what the greatest part about this is that the photo of the turtle you selected was really super simple, a little cartoon turtle, very cute. And of what were there, 5 or 6 of us that
5 or 6. Yeah.
It stays right here by my desk. I love looking at it. It's one of my fondest memories. I love it. But that turtle, everyone's turtle was so dramatically influenced. It was so everyone like what someone even had I think they colored their orange instead of green or purple. I think yours is purple.
Yeah, mine's purple.
Yeah. Well, purple is I think still your favorite color.
Everyone's turtle is different.
Yes.
What I remember most is one of my employees, he was like, I can tell that one's yours, all the perfect lines. I was like, I'm a little bit, I follow the directions.
I had to put him in the water and I had to add some little fishes to him.
Oh yeah, the fishies. Yes.
Yeah, so he has the little fishies there with him to give him company. But yeah, this stays with me right by my desk all the time. So that was a super fun exercise. I think one of the things I want to share, and I think that work is third. I think that there are ways when you're in work and when you spend a majority of your time at work, and that is how you make your daily bread. That is how, you support your family. Things like that, like ways that you can adopt and incorporate work is third attitudes and opportunities. Meditation rooms, timeouts, kindness, being kind, bringing people in, and just, I always say in the workplace, one of the most fundamental things you can do with your leadership and your employees is to break bread with them. Have a
Yeah.
luncheon, have a bagel and paint party. So I love doing things like that. I think it shows your team that you are also one of them, and it makes a team. So those are always fun.
Great tips, great points. Such a
Yeah.
good memory for me too, and I'm sure for the rest of the team. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you still have it. I think that's wonderful. That's great.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we have talked about quite a bit, and I'm looking at the time like I always say this, but really, like, how does it go by so fast? It's just so
I
fun.
I know it is fun.
So I usually ask something like, what are you taking away from today? Or like, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about? So I'm gonna leave it up to you. What do you want to leave the show with?
I guess I want to say that I will leave it with applauding you. I think you have done this amazing thing that you wanted to do, and you did it in this really strategic way. I'm in awe of it. I think it's wonderful, and you stay rooted. You stay rooted, and I think I want to talk about boundaries and how work is third. I think an important fundamental part of that is staying rooted in whatever that is that makes you who you are. And from the minute I met you, when you were working on the accreditation, you were working on policies and procedures, you are no different then than you are today, even though you're completely different today. And I hope that that's a really good takeaway for people, is that part of boundary setting and part of understanding who we are as people is having that roots in something and staying true to that, staying true to who you are and not giving in to something else. So great opportunity. And couldn't be more proud of you. I'm just so proud of seeing every single thing that you do. And want to see it grow and grow and grow and grow. And I know that you're helping other people, and I know other people are listening and watching. So thank you for that opportunity.
Oh, Lynn, thank you so much for all of that. I mean, I just have so much love for you, and I'm so glad that you could be on the show. I really appreciate what you had to say, because I have tried to it's nice when people recognize what you're doing, right? Like, I have tried to be strategic about making a shift, but also still just being myself in this whole process.
Yeah,
And yeah, and so to hear you say that, I see what you're doing, it means a lot to me.
good. Well, you are part of the power squad.
Yeah, we got to resume. We got to call Leslie. We got to call our friend Leslie. We got to get some calls going again.
We do. That would be great. Even if it's once a quarter, that would be great.
Yeah. Maintaining those connections, I think, helps us to remember that we have other priorities in life.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for listening to Work is Third. If you enjoyed this conversation with Lynn, share it with someone who's learning to stay rooted through change. You can find a list of all the books and resources we mentioned in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It really helps others find the show and join the Work is Third movement. And as always, remember, you are more than what you do. Keep leading with heart.